The storm had been raging for 3 days when Nathan Crawford first saw her through the driving rain. Lightning split the sky as he ran from his ranch house to the barn, and in that brief moment of electric brightness, he glimpsed a figure huddled against the far wall of his property, small, soaked, and clearly desperate. Nathan was a man who'd learned to mind his own business. 7 years of living alone on his remote ranch in the Colorado Territory had taught him that solitude was safer than company, that silence was preferable to the complications that came with other people's problems. But something about the way the figure pressed against his fence, shivering in the merciless downpour, made him stop. She was young, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair plastered to her skull, and a dress that had once been fine but now hung in muddy tatters. Her shoes were gone, leaving her bare feet bleeding on the rocky ground. But it was her eyes that made Nathan's chest tighten with recognition. They held the hollow look of someone who had nowhere left to run. "Miss," he called through the rain, having to shout to be heard over the thunder, "you can't stay out there. You'll catch your death." The girl's head snapped up, and for a moment Nathan thought she might bolt like a spooked deer. Her whole body tensed, ready to flee, and he could see her calculating whether he posed more danger than the storm. "I'm not going to hurt you," Nathan said, raising his hands to show he meant no threat. "But this storm's not letting up, and you're already half frozen. Come inside." "I can't," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. I can't pay you." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He'd heard that tone before, from women who'd learned that nothing in life came without a price, who'd been taught that their bodies were currency in a world that offered them few other options. "I'm not asking for payment," Nathan said firmly. "I'm offering shelter from a storm. Nothing more, nothing less." She stared at him for a long moment, water streaming down her face like tears. Nathan could see her weighing her options, the devil she didn't know against the certain death that waited in the storm. "Just until the rain stops," she said finally, her voice so quiet he almost missed it. Nathan nodded and gestured toward the barn. "There's dry hay in there, and it's warm. I'll bring you some food and blankets." As they made their way through the mud and driving rain, Nathan noticed how she moved, careful, alert, ready to run at the first sign of danger. Whatever had driven her out into this storm, it had been worse than the risk of dying in the wilderness. The barn was warm and dark, filled with the comforting sounds of horses settling for the night, and the sweet smell of hay. Nathan lit a lantern and hung it from a beam, casting golden light over the space. The girl stood near the door, poised for escape, water dripping from her torn dress to form puddles on the wooden floor. "I'll get you some dry clothes," Nathan said, trying to keep his voice gentle and non-threatening. "My sister left some things here when she visited last year." "Your sister?" The girl's voice carried a note of hope, as if the mention of another woman made him seem less dangerous. "Emma. She's married now. Lives in Denver with her husband and 2 children. Good woman. She'd tend my hide if she knew I left someone out in a storm like this." For the first time, the ghost of a smile crossed the girl's face. "She sounds nice." "She is. Stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery, but nice." Nathan moved slowly toward a chest in the corner, making sure she could see his every movement. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, and Nathan could see her debating whether to tell the truth. "Rose," she said finally. "Rose Smith." It was obviously not her real name, but Nathan didn't challenge it. Everyone deserved the right to reinvent themselves, especially someone who looked like she was running from something that had tried to destroy her. "Well, Rose Smith," Nathan said, pulling a simple blue dress from the chest. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need. No questions asked, no payment expected. Just human kindness, because that's what decent people do for each other." Rose's eyes filled with tears at his words, and Nathan realized it had probably been a long time since anyone had shown her genuine kindness without expecting something in return. "I don't understand why you're helping me," she whispered. Nathan paused in his gathering of supplies, thinking about his answer. "Because everyone deserves a chance to start over," he said finally. "Because sometimes good people find themselves in bad situations through no fault of their own. And because," he met her eyes directly, "because you look like someone who's been hurt enough for one lifetime." Rose broke down then. great sobbing tears that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. Nathan wanted to comfort her, but he sensed that any sudden movement might send her fleeing back into the storm. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe here, whatever you're running from. It can't reach you here. You don't know what I've done," Rose said through her tears. "You don't know what I am. I know you're a young woman who's been through hell," Nathan replied firmly. "I know you're brave enough to walk through a storm rather than stay in whatever situation you left behind. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Rose looked at him with wonder, as if she couldn't quite believe that someone could see her as anything other than damaged goods. Nathan felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same one he'd felt when he'd found injured animals on his property, creatures that had been hurt so badly they'd forgotten that not all humans meant them harm. "I'll leave these clothes here and go back to the house," Nathan said, setting the dress and some blankets on a clean pile of hay. "Take your time getting changed. I'll bring some food in a while. Just leave it outside the door if you don't want to see me." "Mr. Rose began, then stopped. "Crawford. Nathan Crawford." "Mr. Crawford," Rose said, her voice stronger now. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay this kindness." "You don't need to repay it," Nathan said. "Kindness isn't a debt to be settled. It's just the right thing to do." As Nathan made his way back to the house through the lessening rain, he found himself thinking about the girl in his barn, Rose Smith, with her haunted eyes and careful movements, her obvious fear of men and her desperate gratitude for simple human decency. He'd seen women like her before, in the rough mining towns and frontier settlements, women who'd been forced into lives they never would have chosen, who carried shame that wasn't theirs to bear. Nathan had always believed that people were more than their worst moments, more than the circumstances that life had forced upon them. His own past wasn't spotless. He'd done things during the war that still woke him up at night, things that had driven him to seek solitude in these remote mountains. If he deserved a chance to build a new life, then so did she. The next morning, Nathan woke to find the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and bright. He prepared a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits, along with hot coffee, and carried it all to the barn on a wooden tray. "Rose," he called softly, knocking on the barn door. "I brought some breakfast. You can come in." Came her voice from inside. Nathan entered to find Rose transformed. She wore Emma's blue dress, which fit her reasonably well, and had braided her dark hair back from her face. The hollow look was still in her eyes, but she seemed more solid somehow, more present in the world. "You look better," Nathan said, setting the tray on a wooden crate. "Did you sleep?" "Some," Rose admitted. "It's been a long time since I felt safe enough to really sleep." The casual way she said it broke Nathan's heart. He could only imagine what kind of life had taught her to sleep with one eye open, to fear the very people who should have protected her. "Well, you're safe here for as long as you want to stay," Nathan said. "I meant what I said last night." Rose studied his face, still seeming to search for hidden motives. "What do you want from me in return?" "Nothing," Nathan said firmly. "I live alone. I keep to myself, and I don't ask questions about people's pasts. You can help with chores if it makes you feel better about staying, but it's not required. Most men," Rose began, then stopped, color rising in her cheeks. "Most men are idiots," Nathan said bluntly, present company excluded. "I hope." That earned him a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen from her. "You're different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" Rose considered her words carefully. "Someone who would want payment. Someone who would see a woman alone and desperate and think it was an opportunity." Nathan felt anger burn in his chest, not at her, but at whatever experiences had taught her to expect such treatment. "Well, you can put those worries to rest. I've got more respect for women than that, and more respect for myself." They sat in comfortable silence while Rose ate, and Nathan found himself studying her more closely. Beneath the exhaustion and fear, he could see intelligence in her eyes, strength in the set of her shoulders. Whatever had happened to her, she was a survivor. "Can I ask you something?" Rose said finally, setting down her coffee cup. "Of course. Why do you live alone out here? A man like you. I'd think you'd have a wife, a family." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, thinking about how much to share. Had a fiancé once, he said finally. Before the war, when I came back, well, let's just say some experiences change a man in ways that make him hard to live with. Things I'm not proud of, Nathan said simply. Things T. What happened in the war? Things I'm not proud of, Nathan said simply. Things that made me realize I was better off alone, where my nightmares couldn't hurt anyone else. Rose nodded, understanding passing between them. They were both refugees from their pasts, both seeking peace in the vast emptiness of the frontier. How long have you been out here? She asked. 7 years. Built this place with my own hands. Raised cattle, learned to live with the silence. It's been a good life, mostly lonely, though Nathan met her eyes, until now. The words hung between them, carrying weight neither of them was quite ready to examine. But for the first time in 7 years, Nathan found himself grateful for the storm that had brought this broken, brave young woman to his door, outside. The sun was shining on a world made new by rain, and in the warm darkness of the barn, two damaged souls began the slow process of healing each other, one careful word at a time. 3 weeks had passed since the storm, and Rose had settled into life on Nathan's ranch with a quiet grace that never failed to amaze him. She'd insisted on earning her keep, and her gentle touch with the animals had proven invaluable. The horses responded to her like she spoke their language, and even his most cantankerous bull seemed calmer in her presence. Nathan watched from the corral fence as Rose worked with Star, a young mare who'd been skittish since a run-in with a mountain lion. Most people approached the horse with force, trying to dominate her into submission. But Rose simply stood in the center of the corral, speaking in soft tones, letting the mare come to her on her own terms. Easy, beautiful girl, Rose murmured, her voice carrying across the morning air. No one's going to hurt you here. You're safe now. The words could have been directed at herself, Nathan thought. Over the past weeks, he'd watched Rose slowly begin to trust first in her safety, then in his word, and finally, tentatively, in the possibility that she might have a future beyond running and hiding. She's responding well. To you, Nathan said, as Rose emerged from the corral, Star following behind her like a devoted dog. She just needed someone to understand that she's been hurt, Rose replied, stroking the mare's neck. Sometimes healing starts with being seen, really seen, by someone who doesn't judge. Nathan felt the familiar tightening in his chest that came whenever Rose said something that revealed the depth of her own wounds. She spoke about healing with the authority of someone who'd had to learn it the hard way. Rose, Nathan said carefully, can I ask you something? She tensed slightly, the wariness never completely gone. What? How long were you on the road before you found me? Rose was quiet for so long that Nathan thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. 2 months, maybe longer. Time sort of blurred together. Nathan tried to imagine this gentle woman surviving alone in the wilderness for 2 months, and the thought made him sick. Where did you come from? What were you running from? Rose turned away, focusing intently on brushing Star's mane. I worked in a place in Silver Creek, the Golden Rose Saloon. She said the name like it tasted bitter. It wasn't. I didn't choose it, not really. But circumstances, understanding, hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. The Golden Rose Saloon wasn't just a drinking establishment, it was one of those places where desperate women sold themselves to survive, where hope went to die in dimly lit rooms above the bar. Rose, he said gently, you don't have to. I want to tell you, she interrupted, her voice gaining strength. You've been nothing but kind to me, and you deserve to know who you've been sheltering. Nathan moved closer, careful not to crowd her. You don't owe me explanations. Maybe not, but I need to say it. Rose set down the brush and faced him directly. My real name is Eleanor Whitman. I'm from Philadelphia. My father was a minister. The irony wasn't lost on Nathan, a minister's daughter ending up in a frontier brothel. He could only imagine the circumstances that had led to such a fall. What happened? He asked softly. Eleanor Rose closed her eyes as if the memories were too painful to face with them open. My parents died in a cholera outbreak when I was 17. I had no family, no money, no skills that anyone valued. I tried to find work, but she laughed bitterly. A young woman alone in Philadelphia has limited options, especially one with no references or connections. Nathan felt anger building in his chest, not at her, but at a world that gave young women so few choices, that drove them to desperation through sheer callousness. I met a man, Rose continued, her voice growing quieter. Charles Blackwood. He was charming, well-dressed, said he'd take care of me. I was so grateful, so naive. I thought he was going to marry me, but he didn't, Nathan said. Already knowing the answer, he brought me west, promising a new life. By the time I realized what he really intended, I was trapped, miles from anywhere. No money, no way home. And Charles, he wasn't the gentleman he'd pretended to be. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. He'd met men like Charles Blackwood, predators who preyed on vulnerable women, who built their fortunes on human misery. The Golden Rose was his establishment, Rose said, and I was an investment. He made sure I understood that I belonged to him, that I had no choice but to work off my debt for bringing me west. How long? Nathan asked, his voice rough, with suppressed fury. 3 years. The words came out like a confession, heavy with shame that Nathan knew she didn't deserve to carry. 3 years of, I can't even, the things I had to do, the men who she stopped. Wrapping her arms around herself, Nathan wanted to reach out to her, to comfort her, but he sensed that physical touch might be too much right now. Instead, he offered her his words. None of that was your fault, he said firmly. You were a child, alone and desperate. Charles Blackwood was the criminal, not you. I should have fought harder, Rose whispered. Should have found a way to escape sooner. You survived, Nathan said with quiet intensity, in a situation designed to break you. You survived. That takes incredible strength. Rose looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. How can you stand to look at me? How can you let me stay here, knowing what I am? What you are, Nathan said, moving closer, is a woman who's been through hell and come out the other side. What you are is brave and kind and gentle with frightened animals, because you know what it feels like to be afraid. What you are is Eleanor Whitman, daughter of a minister, who deserves dignity and respect and a chance to build the life she chooses. Rose Eleanor broke down then, sobbing with the raw grief of someone who'd been carrying shame that was never hers to bear. This time, Nathan didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out 3 years of pain and humiliation and fear. I'm so sorry, she whispered against his chest. I'm so sorry for all of it. You have nothing to apologize for, Nathan said fiercely. Nothing that happened to you was your choice or your fault. They stood like that for a long time, Eleanor finally allowing herself to be comforted, Nathan offering the strength and protection she'd been denied for so long. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back slightly to look at him. How did you escape? Nathan asked gently. Eleanor wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Charles started bringing clients to the private rooms upstairs, wealthy men from back east who paid extra for particular services. One night, there was a fight. One of the men pulled a gun. Shots were fired. In the chaos, I saw my chance and ran. You've been running for 2 months. 2 months. 3 days, Eleanor said with grim precision. Charles sent men after me. I've been moving at night, hiding during the day, stealing food when I could find it. I knew if they caught me, she didn't need to finish. Nathan could imagine what Charles Blackwood would do to a runaway investment. They won't find you here, Nathan said with absolute certainty. This ranch is isolated, and I know how to make people disappear if they come looking where they shouldn't. Eleanor searched his face. You do that. Risk yourself for me. Without question, Nathan replied. No one's taking you back to that life. Not while I draw a breath. The fierce protectiveness in his voice seemed to surprise them both. Nathan had spent 7 years avoiding emotional entanglements, but something about Eleanor had shattered his carefully constructed walls. Nathan, Eleanor said softly, what's happening between us? Nathan considered the question, thinking about the way his heart raced when she smiled, the way her presence had filled the empty spaces in his life, the way he'd started imagining a future that included someone else. I think, he said carefully, we're two broken people who found something worth healing for. Eleanor's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his. I'm not sure I know how to be anything other than what I was forced to become. Then we'll figure it out together, Nathan said. One day at a time, one choice at a time, you get to decide who Eleanor Whitman becomes from here. As they stood together in the morning sunshine, surrounded by the peace and beauty of the ranch, Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years: hope. Not the desperate hope of escape, but the quiet hope of redemption, of a future built on her own terms with a man who saw her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. The shadows of her past would always be there, but for the first time since she'd fled Philadelphia, Eleanor began to believe that shadows couldn't survive in direct sunlight. And Nathan Crawford was nothing if not light in her darkness. Outside, the sun was shining on a world made new by rain, and in the warm darkness of the barn, two damaged souls began the slow process of healing each other, one careful word at a time. The riders came on a Tuesday morning in late September, when the aspen leaves were turning gold and the air carried the crisp promise of winter. Eleanor saw them first from the kitchen window, where she was kneading bread. 3 men on horseback, moving with the purposeful gait of those who knew exactly where they were headed. Her blood turned to ice water in her veins. "Nathan," she called, her voice barely steady. "Nathan, they've found me." Nathan emerged from the barn where he'd been shoeing horses, wiping his hands on a leather apron. One look at Eleanor's white face told him everything he needed to know. He'd been expecting this day, had prepared for it, but the reality still hit him like a physical blow. "Get to the root cellar," he said quietly, his voice calm despite the storm brewing in his eyes. "Don't come out until I come for you, no matter what you hear." "Nathan, no," Eleanor said, grabbing his arm. "They'll kill you. Charles doesn't leave loose ends." "Then it's a good thing I don't plan to be a loose end," Nathan replied, checking the rifle he kept by the door. "Go, now. Trust me." Eleanor hesitated for a heartbeat, then pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. "I love you," she whispered, the words carrying all the weight of things that might never be said again. "I love you too," Nathan said, his voice fierce with promise, "and I'm not letting them take you." As Eleanor disappeared through the trap door that led to the hidden cellar Nathan had dug years ago for storing supplies, he positioned himself. On the front porch, the rifle rested casually across his knees, but his finger was near the trigger. The 3 riders approached slowly, clearly sizing up the situation. The man in the lead was well-dressed in a way that spoke of money and violence. Expensive clothes that couldn't disguise the cold brutality in his eyes. Nathan had no doubt this was Charles Blackwood himself. "Mr. Crawford," Blackwood called, as they stopped about 20 feet from the porch. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I have a lot of things," Nathan replied conversationally. "You'll have to be more specific." Blackwood's smile was sharp as a blade. "A young woman, dark hair, about 20, goes by Rose, though that's not her real name. She's been misplaced for some time now. Can't say I know anyone by that description," Nathan said, his voice perfectly level. "I live alone. Come." "Now, Mr. Crawford," Blackwood said, dismounting slowly, "we both know that's not true. My associates have made inquiries in the nearest town. You've been seen with a young woman, shopping for women's clothing, supplies for the people instead of one." Nathan cursed silently. He'd been careful, but not careful enough, even if that were true. He said, "I fail to see how it's your concern." "It's my concern because the woman you're harboring is a thief," Blackwood said, his voice hardening. "She stole from me money, jewelry, personal property. I want her back so she can face justice." "Justice," Nathan repeated, contempt dripping from the word. "Is that what you call forcing women into prostitution? Justice?" Blackwood's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the monster underneath. "I see she's been filling your head with lies. Rose was a willing employee who signed a contract. She owes me 3 years of service to pay off her debts. Funny thing about contracts," Nathan said, rising slowly from his chair. "They're only valid if both parties enter them freely. Kidnapping and coercion tend to void such agreements. You're walking a dangerous line, Crawford," one of Blackwood's men warned, his hand moving to his gun. "Am I?" Nathan asked, his own weapon shifting almost imperceptibly. "Because from where I stand, you're 3 men trespassing on my property. making threats against a woman under my protection. Your protection. Blackwood laughed coldly. She didn't tell you. Did she? What she is. What she's done. Rose isn't some innocent victim, Crawford. She's a whore who's very good at playing the wounded dove to gullible men. Nathan's finger tightened on the trigger, but he kept his voice steady. Even if that were true, which it isn't, it wouldn't give you the right to own her. I have a legal document. You have a piece of paper you forced a desperate girl to sign, Nathan interrupted. And even if it were legitimate, which it isn't, Eleanor Whitman is no longer bound by it. Blackwood's eyes narrowed at the use of Eleanor's real name. So she did tell you. And you're still willing to harbor a fallen woman? A used-up piece of... The rifle cracked before Blackwood could finish the sentence, the bullet kicking up dirt inches from his feet. Nathan had the weapon reloaded and aimed again before any of them could draw their guns. The next one won't be a warning, Nathan said, his voice deadly quiet. You will not speak about her that way on my property. You're making a mistake, Crawford. Blackwood snarled. I have influential friends, judges, politicians, law enforcement. I can make your life very difficult. Then I guess we'll see who has more influence. Nathan replied. A corrupt pimp or a decorated Civil War veteran with friends in the territorial government. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Blackwood's eyes. He'd clearly expected this to be simple: intimidate one isolated rancher, take back his property, disappear into the vast frontier. He hadn't counted on Nathan's military background or connections. This isn't over, Blackwood said. Remounting his horse, Rose belongs to me, and I will have her back. Eleanor belongs to herself. Nathan corrected. And she's chosen to stay here. If you come back, you won't leave. The three men rode away. But Nathan knew they'd be back. Men like Blackwood didn't give up easily, especially when their pride was wounded. He waited until they were out of sight. Before calling to Eleanor, she emerged from the cellar white-faced and shaking, launching herself into Nathan's arms the moment she saw him. I heard the gunshot, she said, checking him frantically for wounds. Are you hurt? I'm fine, Nathan said, holding her tight. Just sent them a message about proper manners, Nathan. You don't understand, Eleanor said, pulling back to look at him. Charles isn't just going to give up. He'll come back with more men. Or he'll find another way. He always does. Then we'll be ready, Nathan said firmly. I'm not letting him take you, Eleanor. I don't care what it costs. It might cost your life, Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. It might cost both our lives. Maybe I should just go with him. End this before. No. Nathan's voice cut through her words like a blade. Don't even think that. You're not going back to that life, not ever. Then what do we do? Nathan was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then his face hardened. With resolve. We get married. Eleanor stared at him. What? We get married, Nathan repeated. Today, right now. A married woman has legal protections that an unmarried one doesn't. And as your husband, I have the legal right to protect you from anyone who tries to harm you. Nathan, you can't marry me just to protect me, Eleanor protested. That's not fair to you. Who says that's the only reason? Nathan asked, cupping her face in his hands. Eleanor, I love you. I want to spend my life with you, build a future together. The protection is just a bonus. But my past is past, Nathan said firmly. What matters is our future. Eleanor searched his face, seeing nothing but love and determination. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Nathan said, marry me, Eleanor, not because of Charles Blackwood or legal protection, but because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you. Eleanor's answer was a kiss that tasted of tears and hope and new beginnings. When they broke apart, both were smiling through their tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. They rode to town that afternoon, where the circuit judge happened to be holding court. Nathan's reputation and war record opened doors that might have remained closed to a woman with Eleanor's past. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, witnessed by the judge and his clerk. When Charles Blackwood returned 3 days later with 6 men and a forged warrant, he found himself facing not just Nathan Crawford, but Nathan and Eleanor Crawford legally married, with documented proof and witnesses. The territorial sheriff, a friend of Nathan's from the war, Was there to ensure everything remained lawful? You can't hide behind marriage forever. Blackwood snarled as the sheriff escorted him off the property. I'm not hiding, Eleanor said, speaking publicly for the first time since her ordeal began. I'm living, and I'm never going back. As they watched Blackwood and his men disappear over the ridge, Eleanor felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for years. She was free, truly free, not just from Blackwood's control, but from the shame and fear that had defined her existence. So, Nathan said, slipping his arm around his wife's waist, what would you like to do with the rest of your life, Mrs. Crawford? In the years that followed, Nathan and Eleanor Crawford became pillars of their community. Eleanor's gentle way with injured and traumatized animals led to a reputation as a healer, and she helped many other women who found themselves in desperate circumstances. Their ranch became known as a place where those who needed a second shadows of her past would always be there. But for the first time since she'd fled Philadelphia, Eleanor began to believe that shadows couldn't survive in direct sunlight, and Nathan Crawford was nothing if not light in her darkness. Outside, the sun was shining on a world made new by rain, and in the warm darkness of the barn, two damaged souls began the slow process of healing each other, one careful word at a time. Eleanor smiled, the expression transforming her face with joy. Live it, she said simply. Just live it, with you. In the years that followed, Nathan and Eleanor Crawford became pillars of their community. Eleanor's gentle way with injured and traumatized animals led to a reputation as a healer, and she helped many other women who found themselves in desperate circumstances. Their ranch became known as a place where those who needed a second chance could find refuge and hope. Charles Blackwood tried twice more to cause trouble, but the Crawfords' growing network of friends and allies made such attempts costly and futile. Eventually, he moved his operations elsewhere, leaving the Crawfords to build their life in peace. Eleanor never forgot where she came from, but she learned to see her past not as a source of shame, but as proof of her strength. She had survived the worst that life could throw at her and emerged with her capacity for love and compassion intact, and Nathan never regretted the storm that had brought her to his door. The lonely rancher had found not just a wife but a partner, someone who understood that true strength came not from avoiding hardship, but from facing it with courage and grace. Their love story became legend in the territory, proof that redemption was possible, that the past didn't have to define the future, and that sometimes the most broken people were capable of the most extraordinary healing, both of themselves and others. The barn where Eleanor had first found shelter became a symbol of new beginnings, and for the rest of their lives, whenever storms threatened, they would stand together and remember that sometimes the worst weather brought the most precious gifts. Thank you for following Eleanor and Nathan's powerful journey from desperation to redemption, from shame to dignity, and from fear to love. This story reminds us that everyone deserves a second chance, and that true love sees beyond the scars of the past to the beauty of the soul. If this tale of courage, healing, and unconditional love moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories of the human spirit. Your support helps us continue sharing these important narratives about hope, redemption, and the power of choosing love over judgment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are many more inspiring adventures waiting for you. So, Nathan said, slipping his arm around his wife's waist, what would you like to do with the rest of your life, Mrs. Crawford? In the years that followed, Nathan and Eleanor Crawford became pillars of their community. Eleanor's gentle way with injured and traumatized animals led to a reputation as a healer, and she helped many other women who found themselves in desperate circumstances. Their ranch became known as a place where those who needed a second shadows of her past would always be there. But for the first time since she'd fled Philadelphia, Eleanor began to believe that shadows couldn't survive in direct sunlight, and Nathan Crawford was nothing if not light in her darkness. Outside, the sun was shining on a world made new by rain, and in the warm darkness of the barn, two damaged souls began the slow process of healing each other, one careful word at a time.